Several years ago, one boxing expert said this: Joe Frazier had it. Frazier was the classic overachiever. He'd come at you a one-arm, short-arm, predictable fighter, but he beat the unbeatable man. That's what this kid's got, an intensity. It's something you can feel, a three-dimensional thing. It takes away the other guy's enthusiasm to fight. Money can't give it to you. That's not enough incentive. It's got to be something else. The expert had it right. It wasn't about the payday. This had nothing to do with money. The intensity of which he spoke was God-given. This fighter was born with that intensity, literally born with the boxer's blood running through his veins. For most of his life, this fighter set his sights on not just being a boxer, but the best boxer, the champion. And so at age 15, the three-sport high school athlete told his parents he wanted to start training as a boxer, and train he did. He trained, he won. He fought like a young man living on borrowed time. The expert had it right. This young man's intensity was at a different level. A look at his career fight calendar proves as much. In time, he earned his due. He got his opportunity. He fought his way to the top, and eventually, in fact, he became the best lightweight fighter of the day. He became the world champion. With taped hands, he grabbed the gold ring, proudly held it over his head, showing the world that hard work pays off. But that's just part of the story, and certainly not the end of the story. As stated, this fighter was born with a boxer's blood running through his veins. He was his dad's son. His dad, who himself had raced through the ranks of boxing, gaining recognition as one of the top lightweights in the 1930s. He fought through challengers until he earned his ticket for a shot at the title, a fight that, thanks to World War II, would never take place, as in 1942, that up-and-coming, accomplished fighter found himself trading in his boxing shoes for combat boots. Talks were already in the works for the championship fight, but his request for a 30-day furlough was refused, and even an offer by the fighter to surrender his share of the purse to the Military Relief Fund didn't change Uncle Sam's mind. Uncle Sam simply replied with, "We want you, not your money, kid." In 1944, the fighter found himself in wartime France, and for all of the battles he'd waged in the ring, he'd never felt anything like the blow dealt from an enemy mortar. Sustaining significant injuries, the natural fight in him pulled him through the tragedy, but understandably would mark the beginning of the end of a promising lightweight fighter's career and chance at the title. Fast forward some 20 years after the accident, the fighter and decorated veteran was now a hard-working civilian raising a family in a place as American as America can be, Youngstown, Ohio. The spring of 1961 brought the fighter a new son, a son who would one day come to him to tell him he wanted to be a fighter. A son that hung on every word of every boxing story his dad would tell him, and when the stories were done, he would ask his dad to start all over. From early on, the one thing that the son never thought was right was that his dad never got the chance to show the world he was the best, that he was the champion. The more he'd think about it, the more it bothered him. And somewhere along the way, the son decided he was going to take what was rightfully belonged to his dad. As the expert said many years ago, this kid had a different level of intensity, one that wasn't driven by money. By now, it should be coming clear. And now, we're going to hear the first-hand account from that young fighter who became the world champion. It's my pleasure and honor to walk down the boxing halls of history with a proud son of Youngstown, Ohio, member of the Boxing Hall of Fame, class of 2015, former lightweight champion of the world, and my friend, Ray Boom Boom Mancini. So many years ago, somebody wrote an article and they said about our guest, Joe Frazier had it. Frazier was the classic overachiever. He'd come at you, a one-armed, short-armed, predictable fighter, but he beat the unbeatable man. He beat Ali. That's what this kid's got, an intensity. It's something you can feel. It's three-dimensional. It takes away the other guy's enthusiasm to fight. Money can't give you that enthusiasm, that drive. That's not the incentive, and it must be something else. And all you have to do is search the annals of boxing history, and you'll find out what that was. That's what I've done, and that's what brings us here today. And it is my honor, great honor and pleasure, to walk down the halls of boxing history with my guest, our guest, the former lightweight champion of the world, member of the 2015 Boxing Hall of Fame, Ray Boom Boom Mancini. Ray, welcome and thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim. That was very kind of you. It was a wonderful intro. Hey, Jim, may I ask you, who wrote that with that intro? Because I never heard that. I mean, I've read a lot of articles. I don't remember anybody writing that, but that was something.
You know, that was actually a quote that led off an article that was run in Sports Illustrated back in 1981, before you had even got the title. And they called, and it's a perfect lead-in. I'll make sure you get a copy of it.
Please.
It's a good lead-in because it actually talks about your pop. The article was called Boom Boom Time Again. And so, yeah, it's fantastic. And like I say, it was the inspiration for this because, like, wow, this is great because we can talk about the Ray Mancini's fights, Ray Mancini, you know, your fights, but your dad is a story. And what a story. And it's no, like I say, you don't have to read far to understand what kind of an inspiration he was on you. You were the president of your high school class coming out of high school, Cardinal Mahoney High School there in Youngstown, Ohio. For those of you who don't know, Ray was a 3-sport athlete in high school. He could play basketball, football, baseball, and you're going to have to clarify, Ray, because the one thing I couldn't figure out is you had a scholarship offer to Xavier University.
Correct.
And what was the academic, sports?
Well, combined. I mean, I was an academic as well as athletic scholarship. You know, Xavier University is a very high quality university, and you know they don't just bring sports people; they want you to have high, you know, reading a certain grade point average. Correct. And I was flattered. It actually offered me to come down and play baseball, and I was very honored and very flattered. You know, but like I said, you know, I knew from early on. When I was turning pro, I was looking to go, you know, to be pro. I knew after my sophomore year that I was a good student. You know, I could have probably been better, except that my mind was distracted. Probably my junior, and certainly my senior year, because I was already looking forward to leaving and going to New York, where I wanted to pursue my career. But like I said, I was a good student. Not a great student, but a good student. But I did well enough to academically to get the scholarship offer. So, yeah.
And so you were going to go in for baseball. And another thing I found out about you is one of your highlights of your sports career as an athlete was a 360-foot home run.
Well, this is when I played during the summer league, Class B. We'll call it, was the Connie Mack League in Youngstown. And we were champions both 17 when I was 17 and 18. And we won the title. We played in the Connie Mack tournament, which anybody knows anything about the Connie Mack tournament. It's the largest baseball tournament, all-star tournament for 16, 18-year-olds. And they play all over the country. And Ohio has the biggest. We have 26 teams. They come from all over. And we play in Youngstown. That's for whatever the home for the Connie Mack tournament here. And the winner out of Ohio usually is favored to win the World Series, the national championship, and you know the World Series. So we had a lot of good teams, good teams like Cincinnati Moeller, not Moeller, that's football. I'm sorry, Cincinnati baseball teams always did well, and we always had a hard time with them. And matter of fact, when we played them in the semifinals, they beat us. I'm sorry, during the tournament they had beaten us. So we had to go through the losers bracket, but we wound up winning the losers bracket, playing them in the finals. And all they had to do was beat us once, we had to beat them twice. So the first game in a doubleheader, I jacked one over to 320. It was actually 320. I might hit around 360 because I jacked that one, but it was over to 320 ball. But a guy threw a lazy curve, jacked it, and I showed power. But I had a good tournament all around. I was spraying the ball well. I batted about 420 for the tournament. I was spraying the ball. Defense, I was very sound. It's fundamentally sound. So I made the all-state team. I made the all-star team as the center fielder.
Nice.
So I was flattered that. So that got, a lot of scouts come to that, to watch our tournament, and so there was a scout there, local guy, who was a scout for the Toronto Blue Jays. So after a tournament, he said, "Hey, look," he said, "I'd like to get you, I'd like to offer you a tryout, come to camp, come to our baseball training camp, if you'd be interested, ba-beep, ba-bop, ba-boop." And I said, "Look, I'm flattered, I'm honored, but man, I'm turning pro. I'm going to New York, thanks, I'm honored." And I was telling that story because I was honored. But now I think about it, look, it was only their second year in the league. I'm not sure I think they were offering anybody a contract. They needed guys to play for them, you know what I mean? So I just happened to was a local guy. I showed good talent. I made those, I showed power, I showed speed. So I fundamentally sound, so he made me an offer.
Nice. That's a great story. So there you are. You're this high school phenom, great athlete.
No, let me just say, I was a good athlete, but I come from a town with a lot of good athletes. Believe me, I was not I always tell people, I don't mean there's no false modesty. I was a good athlete, but I wasn't a great athlete, but I was a very good athlete. Fundamentally sound everything I played. But I played with guys that, guys who got drafted, went to the pros or went to the minors, never made it, never understood why. Because to me, they should have been there. I've seen guys that played football. Now, when I played football in high school, I had to give it up going into my junior year because we were state powerhouse. Carnegie High School, Northeast Ohio, state powerhouse. Played Cincinnati Moeller, Kent, McKinley, Maslin, all them teams. Going into my junior year, I was slated as the starting tailback. And I played special teams in my sophomore year, kickoff teams and kickoff returns, and I even got in as a nickel back on defense. Going into my junior, I was slated both ways, defensive back and tailback. But I was a buck 32. And the coach called me in when he said, "Ray, you got to hit the weights." I said, "Hit the weights? I got to make weight. I can't. So, at that point, I knew, I love playing high school football. You're in high school, especially Northeastern Ohio. It's like a religious right around here. You know what I mean? But I knew what I wanted to be. And so that I had to give it up. I gave it up. I thank you, but I'm going to focus on being a fighter. And I'll never forget what he told me. Be a fighter. You can't go nowhere being a fighter. You get punch drunk or something. At least if you stay here, you get a scholarship. Not to a big school, but to a small school. No thanks, but no thanks. Years later, I spoke at my at the high school banquet. Football. I actually made the high school Hall of Fame. And I was telling that story. And he's sitting front row, the coach. But I had to say, and I said, and his name was Mr. Butchie. I said, "Mr. Butchie, I've been wanting to tell you that all these years, I don't do nothing small. I walk big, I talk big, I live big. I don't do nothing small." And everyone was laughing. But the thing is, everyone was laughing. He's laughing. But that came from deep. That was something I never forgot. I said it in a way, so I didn't, because, 20 years, 30 years later, but I always kept it there, and that's the way, high school people, high school coaches have a big influence on athletes. They can make you or they can break you. And they're supposed to be builder of men, not a breaker of men. But I've seen it so many times. And even with my kids, when they went to high school, coaches who try to do that. And I tell them, man, you're just a high school coach, man. Give these kids an opportunity. Some of these kids will never play when they're through high school. That's it. Why would you start a freshman over a senior who's been here for 4 years breaking his ass? And also you got this kid who may be a phenom, but has got to earn his stripes. Why would you put him in playing time over this guy? It's about winning, or it's about making men, giving these kids opportunity. This is what I don't understand. And one guy said, "Ray, all I am is a high school coach." I said, "That's all you are, yes. Then act like it. And give this guy a chance. He's busting his ass for 4 years, and you put this other kid in there because you're sucking up to the old man." These are the things that drive me nuts about high school. Oh God, I don't know. We went off tangent there, but this is what I'm talking about. Anyhow.
No, that was a good answer, and actually answered the next question I was going to lead in with, which was, so here you are, you're this high school athlete, you get the offer to Xavier, and you go home, and I remember when the scholarship letters came in, my son went for academics, and ended up at Gonzaga University, which is kind of
great university, great school.
similar to Xavier, and so the letters come in, and mom and dad must have been so proud, and you walked in and said, I want to go to the gym. I'll bet that went over big.
Well, look, you first understand, one thing I'm proud of, my parents supported me in everything I ever did. They were my biggest supporters. I didn't have, but I knew how important academics was. My mother, I was 8 years old. My mother went back to school. My mother was 42 years old, or 40 years old, 41, when she went back to college. She got her teaching degree. And that's all she wanted. She wanted to be a teacher. My mom had 130-something IQ, Mensa IQ. When she graduated high school at 16. My mother was a Renaissance woman. Way, not a woman that came home and sit at home. And no, my mother, my mother was she sold Tupperware. I grew up with Tupperware. Literally could sell it myself. She was a secretary in 2 bowling leagues. She was the president, the first non-Italian to be the president of the Giordano d'Italia Women's Auxiliary of the Knights of Italy Club. I mean, she had a full social life, and she was a wonderful mother, and she did everything as a mother and a wife should do. And she was waiting for her time. My mother taught, I always tell my father was my inspiration. He was everything I wanted to be, but my mother was my motivation. My mother is the one who taught me I could be whatever I want to be, that the only limitations I put on I put on my own. My father said, hey, I love you just because you're my baby. I love you just because. But my mother said, you could be anything in this world you want to be, but you have to go after it. It ain't coming to you. You got to go take it. And so these are the things. I had a wonderful combination of that inspiration, motivation, and but both my parents were great role models for me. And so when I came home, so they support everything I want. But granted, but my mother asked me, she said, once you get that education, I told her someday I'd go back to school. Now, to be honest, I haven't done that yet, but I've learned, I've evolved. I've got different businesses, and I've learned from experience. Now, what was it? Einstein could be one of the greatest minds, right? Was once asked, of all your teachers, who's your greatest teacher? He said, experience has been my greatest teacher. So that's what I have. I have experience from doing things. So I hope I hope and pray that I made my mom proud. I think I have. But the fact that I didn't go back to school, I know she's a little disappointed. But I've learned on the job. I've learned education. As I get there, I got a doctorate in life. I got a doctorate in life.
Excellent. Absolutely.
So,
yeah, and she had. I even found a couple statements that in this article that your mom attributed, to your mom. She had nothing, but you could just see her beaming. She was so proud of you. She spoke of how you interacted with your dad, and how you would ask your dad to tell the boxing stories, and he'd tell the stories, and I can imagine a little bit like my own dad. It's like, I already told you that one. But Dad, tell it again. And so
that's exactly it.
You would you hung on every word, and then you would. When he was done telling the stories, you'd ask him to start all over again. But what a career he had. I mean, first of all, he was trained by Ray Arcel.
Right.
And if you know anything about boxing, I mean, Arcel's stable. Let's take a look. Ezra Charles, Tony Zale, your dad. Later on at the tail end of his career, he was in Duran's corner. He trained Holmes when Holmes fought Cooney. I'm sure you know the story, the great story of your dad's first fight.
Yeah.
When he got rocked and and broke his jaw and went to the corner, and he tells Arcel, I ain't got no teeth. I can't feel my teeth. And Ray looks into his mouth and says, you're fine. And your dad goes out and finishes the fight.
Yeah, and wins the fight. And went home for 6 months. They never thought he'd came back. But, you talk about Ray Arcel. People forget, you just talked about as a Charles, Tony Zell, all the great fighters. You forget the first world champion had Jackie Kid Berger from the 20s. Yeah. And he also trained Benny Leonard. I mean, you know, he went from the 20s to the 80s and 90s. I mean, or 80s, I should say. I mean, considered by many to be the greatest trainer of all time. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I had my first fight in New York. I'm 15-0, and I make my pro debut, in New York debut, I should say, at the Felt Forum. The Felt Forum was underneath the Madison Square Garden. The big garden was upstairs. Underneath was the Felt Forum, which seated 3,000 people. So now I'm going to make my debut at the Felt Forum, and I'm fighting Stormer Norman Goins from Indianapolis. Big puncher, good puncher, been on TV a few times. And it was only 2 weeks, well, not quite, yeah, it was only about a little less than a month removed from my brother dying. Yeah. So everyone was nervous about me taking the fight, or certainly my manager put me in with against such a big puncher. How would I react when I got hit? That's a stupid, put me in, you know, and I want to know. And Griff, my trainer, said, no, I gotta know what he got. I gotta know. This kid's, if he's past it, if he's over, if he can fight, if he's not, I gotta know what he's got mentally. So they put me in, so they set up with Norman Goins. So I go in there. It's great, boom, boom, boom. It's action-packed. I jump on him, or fight, bing, bing, bing. I knock him out in the second round. Oh, the place goes well. Don Dunphy, I'm sorry, not Don. Yeah, Don Dunphy. Don Dunphy was still doing radio, and he says, and Ray Boom Boom Mancini makes an auspicious debut. I said, what's auspicious? I didn't know what auspicious meant. I didn't know what that meant, you know. So I said, I'm assuming that's good, right? So now, after the fight, they take me in the back, and they have a press conference, you know, a post-fight press conference. And I'm sitting up there, and my father sat up there with me, and we start. Ray Arcel leaks in from the back, and the guy at front says, oh, Ray, come on up. So Ray Arcel walks on up. Everyone, of course, knows Ray. Ray gets up, and they said, Ray, what did you think of the kid tonight? Oh, wonderful. Did a wonderful job. A lot of talent. He's got a great future ahead of him. Did it remind you of the father? Oh, yes, strong, aggressive, good puncher. Oh, yes, reminded me of the father. Guy yells out, Ray, what would have happened if you fought his father? Oh, no. He could have never beaten his father. I loved it. I tell people, my father was a better fighter than me. I know that. He was a great fighter. There were a lot of great fighters. You had to be great to fight in that era. I came at the right time. I know that. TV was hitting, and they showcased the lightweights. But when I saw Ray Arcel said that, I loved it. Oh, no. He could have never beaten his father. That's the talent back then. That's what he was. You know, because my father was one of the most avoided fighters. There were a lot of guys that were avoided. My father being one of them. And one thing I will say, you know, he had over 100 pro fights. 70 of them were on record. But he had 27 fights around Youngstown before he went to New York. And he only recorded professional fights when he got to New York. So he was like 20-0 when he went to New York. And his local trainer couldn't do much with him. That's when he sent him to New York. But over 100 professional and amateur fights. My father was never, ever knocked out or stopped in any fight, ever. Now, how many fight fighters of that era? There's only 2 fighters of that era that I know that were never knocked out or stopped. There may be more. I'm not sure, but only 2: Kid Gavilan and Billy Graham. Top contenders, fought for title champion, who never knocked out or stopped. And my father. So people don't understand how difficult that is to fight all those. And later on, when my father came back after the war, he was fighting as a middleweight, light heavyweight.
Yeah.
Come on, man. That just goes to show you how great his chin was, how great his heart was. Anyway.
Yeah, I think you've been reading my notes, because one of the things I have down as far as talking about your dad, because again, they report that what I was reading was in 88 fights, he was only off his feet twice. Off his feet twice. Yeah. You know, in 88 rounds of working out, heck, I was picking myself up 88 times, I think. You know, I mean, that is just an amazing thing. And the guys he fought, Billy Marquardt twice, Joey Fontana he fought. It's great. I love how fighters give themselves name to be a little more imposing. He fought a guy out of Pasadena, Frankie Martin, but Frankie fought under the name Chief Crazy Horse. I guess that was supposed to be more intimidating. But and then that led up to 1941. Your dad did one non-sanctioned title fight. It was non-title fight with the champ at the time, Sammy Angot.
Right.
And that was a questionable decision. And
but look, the referee, you know, I'm a firm believer that referees should have a hand in the judging. They're the ones in there. They see everything. At that time, referees did have a hand. Now we don't. They have 3 judges. I know I say the referee should just be able to focus on, concentrate on just the fight itself. What does that mean? Them guys back then couldn't do their jobs. I mean, these guys now can't do it. I don't understand that. It makes no sense. If you're the guy in there, you should have a hand in this. I'm a firm believer of that. But anyhow, the referee voted for my father 7-3 in rounds. 7-3. The 2 guest judges at ringside voted for Angot 5-4-1 in rounds. So it was in Cleveland. Sammy's from Canton. My father was from Youngstown. Sammy was considered a hometown guy. I'm not saying, but you know, look, a lot of people, he won that night, and because of it, that got him the rematch for the title.
But then he got drafted.
But he got drafted, correct.
That got drafted.
The rematch for the title, and he was going to have the rematch in February 42. Got drafted in January 42, and they try to keep him out. They tried everything to see if you can give him a reprieve until after the title fight. And he said, and at that time, the Army Relief Fund was crying for money. He said, we don't want your money, we want you. And so he never got the shot.
Yeah, and then he gets injured. Right. He becomes your dad, and as if it wasn't enough, his son is a world champion. He was on the throes of being a world champion, and he's a Purple Heart veteran.
Yeah.
I mean, what a man.
I thought the Purple Heart was like the best you could get. And then a gentleman from Youngstown, who's a friend of mine, who's a decorated war hero from the Persian Gulf War, the Iraqi War. He's a colonel, and he looked into it. I didn't know he did it. He got I'm trying to think if it's around here. It's not in here. It's in the other room of my father. He got all the medals that my father earned, which I didn't know. It wasn't just the Purple Heart. It was, all. And I kept saying, what's a Silver Star? This, which was what's this one? That means that he actually saw combat. It's a rifle with a wreath around it. Now a lot of guys get a rifle. It's a rifle, a pin, but it means you're an infantryman. But the wreath means you saw battle. I'm learning all these things. But my guy said, as much as the Purple Heart, that Silver Star is just as important. I mean, I met so much all these things, all these awards my father earned that were tremendous.
And then the fight that never happened with Angot was a big motivating factor for you. You always told your dad, one day I'm going to do it. So you go amateur. You did a lot of amateur boxing. And I know it was late 70s when you did your amateur stuff. Were you considering, or did you want to do U.S. Olympic team?
Of course. My first amateur fight was in 76. Watching the Olympic team was very motivational. I was 15. I was training on one. I wanted to wait for I thought around here you had to wait for the Golden Gloves. You had to be 16. But then I heard about the Junior Olympics where you could be 15. So I inquired about it, and friends of my father were bringing up some fighters, local trainers, bringing up some fighters in Cleveland, April of that year. They said they'd take me. So I started training at a local gym here, and I went up with them. And April of 76, I had my first fight. And from there, that started. So I was 15 when I had my first amateur fight. And then, of course, you think about the Olympics. You want to fight for the Olympics. And then as you went into the nationals, I went to local Golden Gloves. Then you went to regional, then went to the nationals. And as you go to the nationals, you realize after I went to the semifinals. I fought Davey Armstrong, 2-time Olympian. I lost a decision to him. I didn't lose the third round. I don't think I lost the third round in amateurs, but he got the decision experience, of course. I lost to Anthony Fletcher that year in the national AAUs in the quarterfinals. Then I fought Anthony Fletcher again in the finals of the Ohio State Fair, which are 3 big national amateur tournaments: National Golden Gloves, National AAU, and Ohio State Fair. I fought him in the championship. I lost another decision, and you realize I didn't have that the guys with the slick run, tap tap move, tap tap move. That was that's the amateur program. Our amateur program is crap. It's absolute crap to this day. We're so far behind. It's laughable now because they don't teach. Because when our guy, that's why very few amateurs, of all the great terrific amateurs over the last 20 years, there's only a handful you could talk about that made the transition and did well.
Right.
Because they don't teach it pro style. They got amateur styles. They can't transition to the pros. The pro game's a whole different game. And when they do it, they try to do that same tap tap stuff, and they get eaten up because the pro game's a hurting game. You got to be able to hurt people. Well, if you don't learn how to sit down in your punches, you develop that punching power. It never happens, And they got that tap tap move. They don't learn how to move their heads. They're straight up and down. So all these different things.
Norman Goins, who you made reference to, he was national AAU champion in the lightweight division, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And did you know any of the members, not to take it to a down note, but, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Did you know any members of that 80 team that went down on the way to Warsaw? San Diego, we actually had a guy, Byron Lindsay was from San Diego, light welterweight. And then we also had one of the coaches, Junior Robles, who was 5 miles from my house where I grew up, was one of the coaches.
I knew some of the names from guys that fought when I fought in the national tournament. I forgot all the guys that were on the plane, but there was, I believe there was one gentleman I remembered because we fought, he's in the year before, and the 2 years before he fought in the national tournament. So I knew some of the names. I don't remember any of them. I didn't know any of them personally, but very sad.
That was a tough one. And so then the U.S. was put in the position where they had to do the, an adjunct team and put them together and say, get out there and do your best, boys. And rough year.
And unfortunately, there's nothing political in this country in amateur athletics. Nothing.
Right.
Whether it's national AU, or the NCAA. NCAA is the most Ku Klux organization there is. It's the most Ku Klux organization there is. And nobody kids you about that. They got these coaches, people out recruiting these kids that come from nothing, literally nothing. They're taking them, offering them all kinds, or offering them everything, this, that, and everything, to make them billions, not millions, billions of dollars to the colleges. Yet you buy the kid a $10 hamburger, he can lose his scholarship. He can lose everything. It's so beyond me. Now, you're talking about now giving these kids a stipend. A stipend? Are you kidding me? It's this is we got the amateur. They're amateurs. They're nothing amateur about it. We know that. These kids are making billions of dollars. They're a corporation. These colleges are corporations. Yet they don't, because hide behind it. Doesn't NCAA, they can't pay the workers. We're giving them an education. No, you're not thinking, the Kentucky, it's one and done. We all know the deal. We know the deal. We know the deal. It pads your pockets. It pads your university. Yet you can't give these kids, $10 because it's against the law. It's the most absurd thing. So now they're going to change it. They're going to have to, or the kids who go be jumping right to college and right to the pros, and the kids who should. It's just beyond me. It's beyond me that we're that far behind.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So you do your AAU stuff. You're going to turn pro, and
I knew after.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. I knew after 79 Golden Gloves, I fought Melvin Paul, who was the defending national champion.
Yeah.
Now, previous to that, I was ranked number 5. I was in the top 5. I was ranked 3 at one time. I was ranked number 4. And they told me, get your passport. You're going to send you overseas to, for international boxing. Great. Never happened. Never went. And always the guys with the tap boxing. So my point being is, after the Golden Gloves, I beat Melvin Paul. I beat him. Even his own people turned it back. He got the decision. After that, I was so heartbroken. wanted to be my trainer. A gentleman comes in, he says, young man, he says, look, he said, you won that fight, but let me tell you something, you ain't never gonna win no national tournament, amateur tournament. He says, you ain't got the style, you got more of a pro style. He said, you ain't never going to no national tournament, but you could be a very, very good pro, and I can help get you there. So he said, my name is Murphy Griffin.
Murphy Griffin.
Yeah. So, because he knew one of our coaches, young, guy from Youngstown, a good friend of mine. They've been friends because they had traveled on international teams together and through a friendship. But what I'm saying is, I was so heartbroken. I said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm never going to fight another amateur fight. I'm turning pro. And that's when he said, well, I got a guy who could help you, and if you give me.
Is that when you went to Dave Wolf?
Dave Wolf, yeah. And he said, I got a guy who can help you. His name's Dave Wolf. He said, if you give me your information, I'll get in touch with you, in a week or so, let you go home, get some rest. I'll contact you. Sure enough, he did. And that was the start of it. But I was so heartbroken after 79 that I had forgotten about the gold Olympics. I forgot I was turning pro. And thank God, look how it worked out for me. Obviously, I made the right decision.
And people don't really understand. I mean, younger people today, when they see, they talk the fight game and the press and the advertising and sponsors. Back in the day, we're old. You and I are all close. I'm a little older than you, Ray, but not by much. But I'm older than you. But I mean, you fought 11 fights or 18 fights. 14 fights, I think, your first year in professional fighting.
Well, no, actually, I've turned pro in October. I had 4 fights before the end of the year. So in 3 months, I had 4 fights, But my first full year as a pro in 1980, I had 12 fights.
Yeah.
Average 1 a month. Now, granted, at that time, people understand your manager gets you fights because people don't understand a manager builds your career, but he's got to pay to get you on his cards. A lot of these guys don't understand the manager's got to pay to get these kids on the undercard because, look, people don't need undercard fighters. There's enough of them. But my manager bounced me around the country. And one thing I'm proud of, my first fight was in, like I said, was in Youngstown. My second fight was in Phoenix. My third fight was in Washington, D.C. My fourth fight was in Dallas. My fifth fight was in Indianapolis. He bounced me around. And later on, I had reporters tell me, I saw you in your fourth fight in Dallas. I covered you in your second fight in Phoenix. Because that's what he wanted. He wanted me to get known to the press long before, before I hit, So when I hit, they said I saw him win. And he did a wonderful job. Dave Wolf was the best.
So Phil Bowen, your first fight, Phil Bowen Fieldhouse, Struthers, Ohio. Yes, what did you? Because it's obvious you have a great recall. We spoke to a young man who was part of the original Gonzaga basketball team last week, and it was great because you'd ask him questions and he'd go into this zone and he was able to just do a total recall on everything. So you decided, I'm done with amateurs. I'm going to go pro. They set you up. You get into the field house. How ready were you? I mean, they must have had to fight to hold you back.
Well, I told Dave, it's funny because I told Dave, I want to have one more amateur fight just to say goodbye and thank the people of Youngstown. He said, why would you have another amateur fight? Why would you have one last amateur fight? Why would you make your pro debut? Yeah, you're right. They get paid for it now. He said, instead of one more amateur, we'll just have your pro debut here. Okay, better yet. And so that's how that came. Yeah, but
so within 5%, what was that first purse? A couple hot dogs and a large soda?
Well, no, I tell you, Dave was smart, man. Dave was smart. He knew I was a draw, and I had a guarantee against a percentage of the gate.
Nice.
So our first payday was better than most, obviously. But I was in Youngstown. The people, they always followed me. They always supported me. We sold out the place. Phil Bowen was 5'2", I believe. He was about 5'10". A tough guy from Cincinnati. But people say, look, you don't want to fight anybody. If you don't want to fight, you can fight the right type of opponents on the way up. It's up to a manager's job to get you the right opponents. But it makes no sense to fight guys who can just fall down.
Right.
You got the right guys. I was strong. I was aggressive. I was hungry. I hit pretty good. So you get the right guy. But even if I jump on him, you jump on these guys, you start banging them, catch them. Now you fight with 8-ounce gloves, and so Phil Bowen was a big, tall, strong guy, and he beat some good, a couple guys that knew the names of, but then I was able to catch him early and drop him, and right on him. So
and again, I can't thank you enough, because as I come up to the questions I want to ask, you are just leading. You're a great dance partner. How good was Ray Mancini? Let me tell everybody who's listening how good Ray Mancini was and what got media attention, why people started paying attention. In his first 11 professional fights, he fought a total of 21 rounds. Ray, I can't imagine guys wanted to get into the ring with you, or if they did, it was like from the opening bell, it took about 20 seconds and you rocked them once and they were sorry.
I'll tell you a funny story. I was, I knocked Phil Bowen out, felt good. My second fight, right?
Oh, yeah, 6 rounds.
No. Now, going back to what you were saying, I was knocking a lot of guys out early, yes. But here's what I'm saying. And later on, what I'm saying, Griff said to me, that's why he took me after I was 7-0. Griff took me to Los Angeles for 6 weeks to train. He said, I was living and training out of New York, but I had a hard time getting sparring partners. Couldn't get sparring partners. That was unbelievable. You bang a guy one day, he won't show up the next. I don't remember the first fight. I got to pay guys to spar with you. It makes no sense. In LA, we went to the Main Street gym. Dave paid for his pockets. We stayed at the Downtowner Hotel on Figueroa. Trained at the Main Street gym. Now it's a parking lot down there now, but the hotel is knocked down. At the Main Street gym, but Griff said, I got to know if you can fight. He told Dave, we got to take him out there because you ain't gonna have no problem getting sparring out there. Because the difference between the Latino fighters from the Caribe and from Mexico are two different things, man. The Chicanos, the Mexican Americans, and Mexican fighters don't spar with anybody. Guys from the Caribe, from the Boricuas or Dominicanos, you bang them a few times in the body. They can't eat the frijoles. They can't. Frijoles are doing the tap dance in their belly, right?
Yep.
I mean, I don't understand it. But anyway, now going back, what I was starting to say about my second pro fight, I go to Phoenix. I fight a guy, a black guy from, he's actually from Los Angeles. His name's Lou
Daniels.
Lou Daniels, thank you. So I go out there. It's a 6 round. I never had a 4-round fight. I started up with 6s, right? Because my style, a 4-round fight, 3-round amateur, 4-round pro. What's the difference? No difference. I needed time, bang these guys, and so 6 rounds is what I started with. So catch him, I drop him about the second round. He gets up. I go at him, boom, boom, and go. 4th round, I drop him again. He gets up. And he's looking over in this corner. And, get up, Jimmy Montoya, get up. For 2nd round, I get 4th round, Jimmy, get up. The 6th round, I drop him again. He looks over Jimmy Montoya. Jimmy Montoya said, get up, or you don't get paid. That kid jumped right up. Now, I gave a beating for 6 rounds. He went to 6 rounds, but I'm saying for me, I went 6 rounds, and for a fighter, you got to know you could do it. So mentally, it was great for me to know. I went 6 hard rounds. I actually dropped the guy, kept getting up, fighting hard, 6 hard rounds, and I knew I could do it. And it's funny that's funny because there was a okay. If you know anything about the Phoenix or back out west, they were throwing money into the ring. I never knew that. They were throwing money in the ring, and I'm like, what's going on? And my manager said, no. That means that's okay. I'm sorry, man. My manager said that just shows how much they appreciate you. Right. They enjoy you. I'm gonna turn this off. At the moment.
Very good.
No messages.
Okay. I'm gonna stop there. I'm sorry. So
no.
How much they appreciate it. They throw money in the ring. So they're throwing money in the ring, and I got the gloves on. I'm trying to pick up the quarters. My manager, I've got the quarters and my manager says, Ray, let him have it. Okay.
Too funny.
I laughed, but I mean that was my first introduction. So, but at least I went 6 rounds. But now the third fight, I knocked the guy out. And then, of course, the next 2 fights, I knocked my guys out. The beginning of January of that year, I fought 3 times in 10 days. Now people go, why did I get, well, your manager sets it up. If you win here, you got your fight here. So I fought, in Indianapolis. Then I'm sorry. I came back to Youngstown. I fought in Youngstown, little suburb of Camel, Ohio. That's where my bride's from. High school gym. In front of 1,500 people. It was the only fight I was embarrassed by the opponent. They brought this guy in from West Virginia. He looked like Charles Manson. Hair down to here. He looked like, I hit this guy, I came out there, I hit him one body shot. He went down like, a sack of rice. And I went, oh. That's the only fight I was ever embarrassed. That was one. But because I fought 4 days later down in Steubenville, Ohio. Fought a pretty tough guy, but I knocked him out in the second round. Now we go to, I'm sorry, in the first round, I knocked the other guy like 3 rounds. Now we go to Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi, I believe. And I go Jackson, Mississippi, and I knocked the guy out in the third round. So my point being is, as long as you're staying healthy and you're winning, my manager moved me around. So it wasn't the physical part. People say, how do you fight 3 times in 10 days? Not physically so much as the mental part. Because every time you fight, no matter what, first round knockout, it's a letdown, emotional letdown. And then you got to get up, 4 days later, then a week later. So that was it. But I did it, and I kept moving and bouncing around. So then I went to Los Angeles, and I trained out there for 6 weeks. And that's when I really learned, I felt after that, I was ready to go. Because
and for all the venues I see on your resume, how is it they never had you at the Olympic Auditorium?
I was supposed to fight there. And the greatest disappointments in my life. I'll tell you what, if you look, I got the dates. I can remember yesterday like it was just, I can remember 20 years ago like it was yesterday. I can't remember yesterday like it was yesterday, unfortunately. But July 23rd, 1980, I fight the Silver Slipper. Then I fight a week later, July 30th. Now, there's only 2 places at that time doing weekly shows. The Silver Slipper in Las Vegas every Wednesday night, and Olympic Auditorium every Thursday night. Now I fight in Las Vegas, and I'm supposed to fight at Olympic Auditorium the following week, which I believe would have been the 6th, August 6th, right? So I win. I win by a knockout, first or second round knockout by Leon Smith, kid from Los Angeles. So I stay in Vegas. I train the Johnny Taco's gym, and now the second fight, July 30th, my manager, my trainer said, "Look, man, I got to get this kid round." See, my manager says, "Well, I'll get him somebody." They bring a guy in named Jaime Nava. My manager says, "Look, this guy's as tough as they come. He goes a distance with everybody. You're not going to knock him out, but we're going to get the rounds. But if you do your job, you should win." He got in distance with Chacon, Bobby, everybody. I said, "I'm going to knock this guy out." No, you're not knocking this guy out. We need the rounds. Just going to be smart. I'm going to knock this guy out. No, you're not knocking him out, but just, okay. So I go under, I hit him, boom, 4th round, I drop him with an uppercut. I hit him a short left uppercut. He goes down, he looks up to me, starts laughing. I go, okay, I ain't knocking him out. All right, so now this is when you got to be smart. Beat him the easiest way, right? But you can't back off. So I'm boxing, and I kept throwing right hand. Every time I throw right hand, you drop his head. Kept hitting him on top of the head. So, instead of digging it down, I drop right there, you drop his head. Make long story short, I beat him, 10-round decision, but my hand blew up like a balloon.
Oh.
The following week. My hand's swollen, so we had to cancel the fight the following week, which would have been Olympic Auditorium. And then I come back in September. I had to wait to September. Fought another guy who never got knocked out, a guy named Johnny Summerhays. Fought him in Warren, Ohio, next town over. The point I'm trying to make is, I would say one of the greatest disappointments I had is not fighting for Olympic Auditorium.
Yeah, that was a staple in our house. You know, my dad and I would sit and watch the fights from the Olympic on Saturdays. I'd watch them by myself on Thursdays.
Jimmy Lennon was the great announcer there.
Yeah, yeah.
Senior, not junior, you know, senior. And all the great, but I remember I've been there a few times. When I was training out there, 1980, I went there to see the fight for the world title fight. Lupe Ventura beat beat Superfly Sandoval. Alberto Superfly Sandoval.
Right, right.
And that's another time I saw when the Mexican, you know,
A lot of coins.
They were throwing that money into the ring, you know, for Ventura. But that was craziness, man. That was crazy. That what a fight, because you had the Nationals against the Chicanos, and I didn't realize there was a bitter rivalry there. I didn't know that. You know, draw Mexicano descent, but no, man, there was the Nationals, and you know, it was interesting. But that place was crazy, and I said I was there. I've been back since. I did a movie there later on at the Olympic. One of the biggest regrets, not being able to fight there.
I'll bet. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. That's history in and of itself. I mean, it is. That's why I say I'm looking at the places you fought. You fought at the Garden. It's like, how is it they never booked him to get into the Olympic auditorium? Now I know the story. So you are marching through opponents one by one by one, and 19th fight they tell you you're going to fight for the NABF lightweight championship, and you are going to go up against Jorge Morales. And there was a fighter.
Yeah. Or well, you know, it's one of them guys that nobody would fight, and I don't know why. I mean, I know why. It was a dangerous opponent. You know, it was one that, you know, you learn later on, high risk, little reward. But I don't understood that. You know, if the guy's there. But here's what I was saying. You know, CBS wants to get into the fight game, early 81. And they want to showcase the lightweights. Oh man, I hit the juggernaut. Could have been any division, but they want to showcase the lightweights. So now they have a tournament, which I'm part of. So I fight Morales. And, you know, it's just one of the fights. I jumped on him. We fought at the Concord Hotel, upstate New York. And I jumped on him and kept him banging against the ropes, wouldn't let him out. You know, I always felt I was stronger than most of the guys I fought. I didn't think they were going to be stronger than me. So my aggressive style made sense. Plus, you know, I always tell people, if you're not a big puncher, being aggressive doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to be one punch knockout. No, I wasn't really a one punch knockout guy, though. I drop guys one punch. I wear a guy down. But if you know, the difference between amateurs and pro, the pro game is a hurting game. If you can't hurt nobody, you're going to have a lot of tough fights. You know, which is, you know, a lot of guys, you know, have shorter careers or, you know, tough as they come, a lot of heart, desire, but people were big punchers. So I always thought I was stronger than most of the guys I was going to fight, and I was a pretty good puncher. So I jumped right on him, and he was a good puncher. But I backed him up, and I don't think he was prepared for that. And I kept him in the corner. I didn't back off. So, you know, that was the thing. I could just hit him, you know. And I felt like my output of punches was going to be hard for somebody to keep up with me. That was my mindset is I'm going to punch till I can't, and you know, if you can punch with me, great. But we're gonna, you know, we'll be in the trenches all night. And so eventually I kept him in the corner, and just it was just a good fight. I was, you know, showing defense, showing angles. I wasn't just a straightforward fighter. Made minutes, I can box on the outside a little bit. So it was a good performance. So I beat him. So it jumps me, Ralph, right? Boom. They matched me against Jose Luis Ramirez, who's the number 3 contender in the world. And the reason I'm telling you, Morales was number 6. I think I was like 9 or 10. I think I was 10. Morales was 6. Now I'm fighting Jose Luis Ramirez. And then the winner of that's going to fight the winner, fighting like Sargoyo. They had just beat Jim Watt for the WBC title. The reason the reason why I'm telling you is important later on. So now, he's got over 70 fights. It's my 20th fight. He's only been beaten twice by decision. One of them, the fight before, he had fought Alexis Arguello in a non-title fight. The fight before Alexis won the world title. He fights in a non-title fight in Miami, which Alexis' adopted hometown. And he loses a split decision. He dropped Alexis twice and loses a split decision. No kidding, right? So they expect that to be the rematch. So he's going to fight me. And of course, I'm not supposed to be much of an opponent for him, just a tune-up. And then he's going to fight Arguello. The odds were so bad, they didn't even have it on the board in Vegas. They didn't even have it on the board. Because he was so far, they wouldn't even put it on the board. And of course, I went out there and did a number on him. That's right. And he was so confident he came to Warren, Ohio, next town over, which, became my home. Like, the Warren, Ohio's next town over from Youngstown. I actually fought more times in Warren than I did Youngstown. And so it was like a second home for me. And it's an arena where they did a lot of plays and stuff like that. So live theater. So it was like 2,500 seats, but it had like a top that was right over, sort of like the Olympic auditorium, kind of.
Yep.
But not as big as Olympic. But the people, man, 2,500 people sound like 25,000. It's just, they were wonderful. And I fought, Ramirez came in and I fought him. He doesn't come right at him, but I boxed him, gave him angles and pushed him on ropes, kept him on ropes, bang, in and out, had him thinking. And I shut him out in all 12 rounds. All 12 rounds, I shut him out in all 3 cards. And that obviously got me in a fight with Arguello.
And that was you're that fight. Yeah. So after 20 consecutive wins, you're going to go in, and few times me as a boxing fan ever sits down and kind of just holds his breath, because I've got such an appreciation and like of the two fighters. Just a few years back, it was when Shane Mosley fought Pacquiao.
Yeah.
Oh, all I knew is that one of my guys was going to win, and I was going to be so disappointed for the guy who didn't. When you stepped into the ring against Arguello, that was one of those times I was like, oh man, maybe there'll be a draw. I don't know, because I didn't want to see either one of you lose.
I appreciate it. Look, I loved Lex. Lex is one of my heroes. I used to read about it. I remember reading Ring Magazine when he beat Ruben Olivares for the world featherweight title at the Olympic Auditorium. I watched when he beat Escalera for the junior lightweight title, and then the rematch beat him again. I loved Alexis. And, to me, it was just personified the word champion inside and outside the ring. Just a classic, just a wonderful gentleman and a wonderful fighter. And so, but, to be the best, you want to fight the best, to beat the best. To be the best, you got to beat the best. And, I was on it. Now, people will say, people will say 20 fights, Lex said over 70, almost 80 fights. It was too soon. I go, I just beat the number 6 contender in the world. I beat the number 3 contender that nobody thought had a chance to get, who had beaten Lexus the fight before. If they should have got the decision. Dropped Arguello twice. I just beat him pretty decisively. Where am I supposed to go when you get offered a shot? First of all, I tell people, to ask my father how many opportunities you get. But if they offer you to fight and you say no, how do I know I'm never going to get the shot again? It wasn't like there was only WCWA. And to me, it was one organization too much. Now it's alphabet soup. But people don't understand back then, if you didn't take it, you don't get it, the opportunity. But I really believed I could beat Lexus. I saw him when he fought Jim Watt. He didn't look impressive, but that's okay because nobody looks good against Jim Watt. We know that. But I just thought I was too strong for Lexus. I thought I'd catch him. I was catching him at the right time. I didn't think he'd, on the downside, on the climb way up. But again, to be the best, you want to fight the best. That's what you want to do. You don't, in your mind, let me think about it. Oh, absolutely, man, no. And so they offered that fight, and we took it. And I'll tell people the story. If we did the press conference in New York, and then later day, I'm going to train at the Catskills at Grossinger's, which became my place. World famous Grossinger's. Rocky Marciano trained there, Roberto Duran, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, all the great fighters through the years, from the 30s and 40s trained there. That's how long Grossinger's was around forever, right? It was a place that people went during the summer to relax. It was a place people camped out and stuff. So all the great fighters are trained up there. So I'm going to go there and train, and I think Lexus was going to another hotels in the area to train. Brown's, there was a couple places. Brown's Hotel was one of them. Or maybe the Concord, something, right? But anyway, I tell the story. And a gentleman wrote a biography on Alexis, Christian Giudice. It's called Beloved Warrior. It came out a couple of years ago. And he interviewed me and he asked me if I'd write the foreword to the book. I said, yes, I'd be honored to, because I became great friends with Alexis and I loved him dearly. Here's the story I told. So the morning before the press conference, the morning of the press conference, I'm going to get up and do road work. And then we're leaving for training camp that after press conference, we're going to drive up. So I'm going through Central Park, me, Chuck Fagan, Tank DeCiccio, my two guys, my camp. As we're running, all of a sudden, Chuck says to me, Ray, Aguayo's coming the other way. And I look up, and I see Alexis running this way. So we're passing each other. So now I said, okay, so we're running. As we get closer, I said, I'm going to get my game face on, his wife goes, hey, Ray, how you doing? I went, yeah, how you round one, Aguayo. I mean, he totally, he was just that was the guy. It was not it was a business for him. He totally deflated me. Because I thought I'd try to get this game face on. Hey, Ray, how you doing? And that was it, genuine. I said, and that's what you understand. But great fighter. And I tell people, for those who say I wasn't ready, it was too soon, all that bull crap. I tell people, if I'd have got blown out 1 or 2 rounds, I get it. But I was winning after 12. And even though I got dropped at the end of 12, I was still winning on 2 to 3 cards. After the 13th, it was even. So going to 14th round, but he took over. He did what he was supposed to do. The 13, 14, 15, the true championship rounds, as they were known, he took over. Alexis is one of them guys. I always tell people that Alexis was one of those guys who he'd set traps early in the fight. Then he'd go back later in the fight to see if them traps caught anything. I made him miss 1,000. I made him miss 100 right hands all night. Made him over the top, make him miss. But it only takes one. As I watched the fight, the tape later on, as you could see, round by round, I was in his chest first 3, 4 rounds. But as rounds started going, he started separating himself. He threw the jab, and he created space. And you don't realize that when you're in there. And when he threw that right at that, he just enough space, caught me at the tip of the chin and dropped me. That's what great fighters do. They create space. They set them traps early in the fight. And that's why I tell people to this day, the true championship distance is 15 rounds, not 12. Any 10-round fighter go 12. Any 10-round fighter. Very few go 15. So when you talk about great fighters, a lot of these guys who only had to go 12, yeah, they're great for their era. Are they great all time? I'd say, yeah. You like to say they could have won 15. We like to think Pacquiao could have won 15. We like to think that. I think Mayweather, but we don't know because they never had to. We don't know. And so the point is, as we know, but we do know this, that the course of history of boxing has been changed by the last 3 rounds. For instance, 1937, Joe Louis is fighting Billy Conn. Joe Louis is way behind on the cards. He knocks Billy Conn out in the 13th round. If it's 12, he loses the title. And I'll never forget the famous line is at the press conference after the fight. Joe Louis and Billy Conn are there, and Billy said to Joe, why couldn't you just let me hold on to the title? He said, I'd have given it, you could have got it back later on. He said, Billy, you had it for 12 rounds. You didn't know what to do with it then. True story, great line. You had it for 12 rounds, you didn't know what to do with it then. So Joe Louis loses the fight, right? Rocky Marciano and Joe Walcott. Marciano's behind going into the 13th round again. Wait, right? 13th round, he's behind. Knocks him out in the 13th round. The greatest one-punch knockout ever. Tommy Hearns and Ray Leonard, the first fight. Ray Leonard's way behind Tommy. He got no chance of winning that fight. He stops him in the 14th round. If you don't, the course of history of Ray's career, Tom's career is changed. So
that's a true story, right? And Angelo got Ray Leonard in the corner on one of the rounds and started smacking him around. Yeah. What are you doing? What are you doing?
There's no way he can win. They knew that. They knew it. And if that's correct, then if it's Aguayo, I'm undefeated as a fighter because I was beating Aguayo after 12 and I was beating Bramble after 12. Well, what does it mean? It don't mean nothing. that's what I'm saying. True championship distance is 15 rounds. So
Right.
where these fighters are, I'm not saying Pat could win 12. I'd like to think he could, but we don't know. We don't know. Those last 3 rounds change. A lot of things happen. A lot of great fighters have lost their title in the last 3 rounds. So anyhow.
And so and then after Arguello, you have a couple more fights, and then fight number 24, there it is. You're the big one, right? Somebody finally came to you and said, hey, you want a shot at Frias?
I wanted to fight Alexis in a rematch. I wanted to get a rematch, but Alexis was going to move up. We knew that wasn't going to happen. Alexis wasn't going to stay lightweight. So he had already planned on moving up. So that title was going to be vacated. So the opportunity to fight Arturo Frias for the BBA title, which we were talking about fighting Claude Noel at one time. And then Arturo came late, turned late, I think 10 days notice, got to fight came in as a late replacement, fight Claude Noel, who was a big puncher and a tough guy from, I think, Trinidad. I think he's from Trinidad, Tobago, Claude Noel. And he knocked Noel out in the 9th round. Oh, man, great for art. Wonderful, man. So I'm getting ready to, so now I come back. The one thing I'm proud of too, I fought a guy October 3rd. got 20-some stitches in my mouth, cutting my mouth all up, right? I fought 7/26, day after Christmas. I got back in the ring, I got back to training camp 4 weeks later. And all I'm saying is the fighters nowadays, these guys lose, they don't fight for a year, they don't fight for 10 months. Well, you get right back to it. Why? And so I got beat, but I got back a month later, and I fought 6 weeks later, and then I fought again the month after that. So I'm very proud of the fact that I didn't let that hold me back. It didn't deter me. In fact, it only made me more ambitious, and let me know that I would be world champion someday. And so I fight, and then I'm supposed to fight Ernesto España for my North American title, for a box off to fight for the world title, fight Arturo Frias, January 24th. What happens, or January 23rd, 24th, that one. And what happens is, as we're training for España, he gets offered, something happened to as we train for España, something happened to Arturo's fight. Arturo's supposed to defend his title in January. His opponent falls out, so they offered her España. Now I got to get a replacement. And they get, the networks give you 3 options. They give you 3 guys. You pick one of those. If you don't, you can take one of those. They have to be contenders. If you don't take any of those, then the fight's off. So you don't get to choose you get to choose out of the 3. But you said, no, I don't like any of them. They go up too bad. So they offered us in the fight. They were pushing, was me fighting Diablito Valdez. They wanted that fight. But here's the rub on that. I'm training for a 5'11" puncher. Now I got a guy who's 5'5", my size, boxer. People say, is that nice shot? Well, I guess it could, but no, I didn't, because I'm a pressure fighter. Pressure, no, I'm going to pressure if you're backing up or coming up to me. It doesn't matter. I'm pressure either way. So, but now you just got to be, different and fight. So you're training for a 5'11" puncher. Now you're getting a 5'5", 5'6" boxer. Good for me. I ain't got to worry about the guy big. He's not a big puncher, so that's good. I'm not going to be in a war, hopefully. But it could mess you up if you're not prepared. But mentally, it's more than physically. You got to prepare for that. And we went there. It was a tough fight. 12 rounds. He was boxing well, smacking me around, man. Some cool out very quick. But the pressure. I finally got to him. The 10th round, I knocked him out. So that got me to fight against Arturo. I'm going to take a breath.
Which to this day, that has got to be one of the most historic, best opening rounds in any fight.
I'm very proud of it. I was, a lot of people ask me, what were you thinking when you got hit? I said, I was just thinking about surviving. I wasn't thinking about anything. But the one thing I learned, my trainer, Murphy Griffith, always taught me, if you get rocked, you can do one of 2 things. You could do one of 2 things. You could cover up, or you can fire back. If you cover up, you better be moving. But but that's an invitation for the guy to come on you. If you fire back, you could break him up, catch him with something, and then move away, maybe and regain yourself, even if you're not 100%. So when he dropped me, I was hurt, but I recovered. Obviously got myself back, but I chose to fire back, and and all of a sudden you fire back, you catch it, boom! I caught him in exchange, boom! I hit him, staggered him, then I dropped him. Oh man! Now I'm like a shark smelling blood. And I jumped on him. As soon as he got up, I just jumped on him, ran over, jump on him, and that's my instincts. And was able to keep him on the rope. And to this day, I still say I don't know how he stood there. How he didn't fall down, because I couldn't. I was running, but that's Arturo. His determination, his desire, his heart. But so we finally got the title. Finally won the title.
And that one was for your dad.
That's for my dad. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you saw afterwards, the city of Youngstown besieged the ring, and then my father, my mother, and we just hugged, cried, my sister, and it was a beautiful moment. And people often ask me, "What was it like? What was the feeling?" I said, "It was euphoric. I can't explain how that was euphoric. I was floating." And to this day, it's the truth. It's like I was floating. It was wonderful. It was just one of the greatest feelings in my life that I was able to finally give my father what I had wanted to after all those years.
And I just thought it was so interesting because your family was so supportive and so involved. They sold tickets out of the family house.
Yeah, for that. Yeah, well, for early in my career. Early in my career, my mother sold tickets. People coming tickets, and it's wonderful. And she was wonderful at that. And it was great. It was a family operation. But this way, my mother wanted to make sure tickets were being sold right. We didn't know kickbacks on that tickets. She just wanted to know that they're going to get down. She just wanted to make sure the people got them that were going to come, and they were sold and handled the right way, because she wanted people to support me, and the people did. And that's why she made sure they got their tickets. And
that's just fantastic.
She also handled the program books, got sponsorship for the program. Yeah, it was Mom. We were one man. My mom was a one-person operation. She handled all my ancillary stuff. That was hers. And she did a wonderful job. Wonderful job.
Well, you've been so gracious with your time. I'm going to go through the rest of this real quick. I do not want to ask, and I'm not going to dwell on all the questions you've ever had to answer about the Duck Coup fight. Everybody knows that one, whether you're a boxing fan or not, you've heard about it. But what I do want to ask in relation to that is, when you see the MMA guys now and the sport of MMA, where let's jump on top of a guy and he's down, he's defenseless, and
it's hard to watch.
And do you think it's just like it's a little too extreme and it's not really?
Here's the upside on that. I've trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 12 years. Wonderful athletes, great athletes. People say, "Oh, it's like street fighting." Well, yeah, that's for the street. Mainly, it is for the street. Jiu-Jitsu is mainly the street sport. It's hard to watch at times. The upside is, if you get caught one punch. Like the boxing, he always says, better to get hit, knocked out one punch, than to take a beating. So a lot of guys get caught and they get kicked or whatever, but the referee jumps in time. Sometimes guys get hit a few more times. Overall, though, these guys don't take a bad beating. If they get hit and they get hurt, they jump in. If they go down and cover up, they jump in. Now, some guys, get on and they get railed. Yeah, it's hard to watch. But overall, most of them don't take a bad beating. Where in boxing, it's over a continuous amount of rounds, continuous. That you get hit, but you fire back, and the guy's showing heart. You can show a lot of heart. 12th, 13th round, you're all banged up. That's hard to watch. I admire MMA guys. I enjoy watching some of the fights, not all the fights. I'm friends with a lot of these guys. But in some ways, it's better. If that sounds better, some ways it's better, because if a guy gets kicked, he goes out, he's out. He gets kicked, he goes down, and jump on. It's better. They don't take a beating. One thing I admire about it, though, they have short careers because the best fight the best all the time. If I fight you in this close fight, we run it back. And if we do it again, run it back again. Dana White is smart, one of the smartest. Bob Arum is the best promoter out there, has been for the last 60 years. We know that for a reason. He sets the fights up. Dana White's not far behind. in the sense of what he's done with his sport, because he has the best. Now they have shorter careers than boxers. They have shorter careers, and if you look at the guys that are in the Hall of Fame, I got 28-17. I mean, they got to lose a lot of them, but that's because it's such a difficult sport. The best fight the best all the time. You're not going to always be a winner. So I admire those guys, man. They don't sidestep anybody because they can't. They don't give them a chance to. If you want to make the money, you got to fight the best, and they do. So I have a lot of respect.
You brought up a name, and I didn't know if I would bring it up or we'd get to it, but you talked about Arguello's contest where there was Arguello was in one of his bouts. He lost the decision. You fought Livingston Bramble. Now, my question is, and it's not about you and Alexis, it was when Alexis fought Aaron Pryor.
Right.
And now that was a fight. It wasn't like, oh, I don't know who's, I hope the right guy went. That was like, I was all about Alexis. I was in his corner. Let's do it. And he lost the fight. But then after the fight, they said that Pryor had failed a drug test.
Well, they didn't say he failed it because he never took one. That was the problem. There was never took one. See, Alexis was waiting in the dressing room for them to come in. He waited almost over half hour. And he said, what's going on? And they said, oh, no, everyone left. So go. Don't worry about it. They got after the fight. They got Pryor. They got right out of there. So they never took it. There was never no post-fight analysis of the urine because, look, the promoters of that, for who's behind the promotion of the fight, it's always been known that people that were behind it were savory people, and that's why they put up the money for it. And so the money was on Pryor. He was a big underdog, but Aaron was great. Aaron fought a great fight, man. But everyone was waiting for what happened when he got hit with that big right hand. Because if you remember before that, as great as Aaron was, and he was great, the best junior welterweight of all time. But a lot of ordinary guys, not people, were dropping him. He'd get up and knock them out, but they'd catch him, and the Japanese guy dropped him. Duan Johnson dropped him. Because he was boom, he'd get up and knock him out. And it was if Lex hits him, he's going to, and I was one of them guys. If Lex hits him with that right hand, he's not going to get up. Well, if you remember about somewhere in the fight, 5th or 6th round, Lex hit him with a right hand that almost took his head off. I mean, if his head wasn't attached to the body, it would have been in the 3rd row. And he came right back. So
I do remember that, and I remember thinking that's the fight.
And so there's speculation, but he won, man. He won. Tremendous. So we can't say what would have happened, could have happened. Here's what we do now. Was something in that bottle? Yes. What? Who knows? Do we know the bottle was never retrieved, never was tested either? 2, there's no post-fight analysis for whatever reason. Everyone was doing a post-fight urine analysis. They didn't that night for whatever reason. So there's a lot of questions to be answered, but I would never take away from what Aaron did. Aaron's greatest junior welterweight of all time, and he beat Alexis that night. Whether you'd say, well, and then when they ran it back, and he beat him more impressively. Sometimes there's every one guy, there's another guy has your number. For every one guy, guys like Aaron were getting dropped by guys who shouldn't be dropped by, but Alexis couldn't drop him, and so it's just, you never know. That's the thing about boxing. Styles make fights. You hear all the time, it's the God's truth though. But fighters don't make fights, styles make fights. But sometimes fighters do make fights. Because Aaron Pryor's style was perfect for Alexis, but he was not to be denied.
The fight you wish you could have had.
Well, 3 fights. First, Camacho in our prep, 1983-84, when it was supposed to happen, when it was talked about happening. That's what I wish. 2, Kenny Bogner. Supposed to fight Kenny Bogner twice. Well, I only had to pull out of 2 fights because of injury. Both of them were against Wagner. So his mouth was running off. I'd have smacked the crap out of him. I'd have beat him like I owned him. I'd have beat him. I'd have knocked him dead. I'd have knocked him cold. And Aaron Pryor, that fight I was talking about. Because let me tell you something. I respected Aaron. And afterwards, we became good friends. Before he passed, I loved him. I became good friends. I had an admiration and love for him. He was great. But when you're that, you want to beat you want to fight them guys. To be great, you want to challenge the greatness, right? Style-wise, he was perfect for me. Because the people for Lexus used to throw constant with his chin in the air. And I just think Lexus was straight up and down. Me, I'm going to be down here bobbing and weaving, catch it banging that body. I catch him on the chin, I'm going to drop him. And he ain't going to get up. People can say, think what they want. I said, believe me, he was great. But that was one of the fights I felt very confident and I wanted. Because again, back then you take on King Kong. In retrospect, I told him, thank God Aaron, we never fought. We had ruined each other. He was great. He was great, man. He's the second greatest fighter to ever come out of Ohio. Who's number one?
You got it.
Who's number one?
Well, see, now for me, it'd be you. But
No.
Your book.
You mentioned him earlier. Ezra Charles.
Yeah.
Ezra Charles, the greatest. I mean, he's from Cincinnati too. You know, as much as I know about great fighters. You know how many people considered him, and I forgot. And then you go back. Oh yeah, many people. You say, who's the greatest fighter, pound for pound? 99% of the times you can hear Ray Robinson. Me, I would say Henry Armstrong.
I was gonna, because I was gonna say your dad's fights that I can imagine if we were able to, your dad be able to fight Henry Armstrong, Willie Pep, Ray Robinson. Those would have been great fights.
My father told me about Henry Armstrong. Another great story. He was in New York training at Stillman's. One of his friends came up to visit him. I forgot the guy's name. I just say Joe. My father says, brings him over to Henry Armstrong's there. He said, Joe, I want to introduce you to the greatest fighter in the world, Henry Armstrong. How about this? Could you see it happening today? It never happened today. What did Henry Armstrong, the humility you have? He said, Boom Boom, you can't say that because you never had the opportunity to fight me. That's such humility.
Right.
You can't say that because you never have it. Who would say that now? Nobody. Right? So that's what I'm saying. That's greatness. But what I'm saying is, my father loved Henry Armstrong. And what he did will never be replicated. And everyone knows he won 3 world titles simultaneously within 1 year, but everyone knows he should have 4. He beat Seferino Garcia at the middleweight title. They called it a draw. 10 rounds instead of 15, because you could, at that time, you could dictate, you could be world title fights at 10 if the commission allowed it. They did back then, not now. And Garcia's people only wanted 10 because of Armstrong's style. And most ringside observers said Armstrong won that fight, but they called it a draw. Could you imagine featherweight to welterweight to lightweight, then he goes to middleweight in the same calendar year? Unheard of. For me, he's the greatest, pound for pound. But 99% of people say Ray Robinson. But you know what? I'm finding out and read more and more. A lot of people say Ezra Charles is the greatest. Why? They thought he could have been the greatest middleweight. The only reason he moved up out of middleweight because he couldn't get no fights. He beat everybody. So he fighting light heavyweights as a middleweight. So he just moved up to light heavyweight. As a light heavyweight, a lot of people think he's the greatest light heavyweight of all time. Couldn't get no fights there. So he went to heavyweight and wound up winning the world title.
Right.
I mean, I didn't realize, I knew he was great, but I didn't realize how great he was. It was actually a middleweight that moved up. My wife's telling me to lower my voice because I'm hyped. When I get excited about people, the sport I love, the people I admire.
I think it's great.
But that's what I'm saying. If you're going to talk about pound for pound greatest fighters of all time, Ray Robinson, okay, I say Henry Armstrong 1, Ray Robinson 2, Ezra Charles 3. But those got to be top 3. In anybody's mind, in anybody's category, anybody's list, they got to be top 3.
So after boxing, are you still doing cigars and wine?
I haven't had a cigar business for a long time, but I'm looking to get back into it. We were actually supposed to get into it last year. I had some guys that wanted to back me in it, but obviously I still have the wine company. We're doing good. We were actually supposed to come out with another wine, a Pinot from Wilmette, which other than Russian River is, the best place for Pinot. But that's been on hold. So, this past year's kicked my behind, business-wise. It's really kicked my behind. I had a lot of good things in the hopper, a lot of things to happen, entertainment-wise, as a lifestyle company. So this year, God willing, will be the year.
That's great. That's great. You have been more than kind and generous. It must be getting close to dinner time in Youngstown, Ohio. I just want to wrap up with this in all the work I did and all my notes here. There's a few lines that were donated or given by your mom in one of the articles I was reading, and apparently they were written originally by you for your dad, and they read, "I cry every tear that this man cries. I try every task that this man tries. I keep every memory that this man keeps. I leap every mountain that this man leaps." And as sons, we always look back. We wonder if we did everything we could for our dad. We always long for the memories that we have and wish we could have made more. But Ray Mancini, I got to tell you, you not only leapt the mountain, you did leap the mountain, but before you leapt off the mountain, you climbed the mountain, you conquered the mountain, you won the title. You did that with your dad in your heart and in your corner. And that's what makes you a champion of life, in and out of the ring. And I can't thank you enough for the time you've given us.
Jim, I appreciate it. And let's do it again, because I know we only got to a certain time.
We did, because I do have other questions to ask you. We didn't even get to, what do you think about today's fighters?
Yeah, we'll get back to me, and I know, we'll do it again. I love that. You guys are wonderful. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Ray, blessings to you and your family. Have a good Lent.
Thank you. Brandon, thank you. Nice to meet you.
All right, Ray. Thanks so much.
Okay, take care. Take care.
Peace.